With March just around the corner, for a lot of us, we're probably wrapping up our winter bulk, or maybe we've already finished our winter peel if we're really smart. So, this is a program aimed for someone who's looking to improve their body comp and explosive strength, and that is the Conjugate Kaijin. Now, the aim with this program is to help improve body composition and really develop your explosive strength. That way, as you move down in weight or as you calibrate after some recent weight loss, you'll be able to maximize your strongman performance as you get lighter. You can't just rely on mass to move mass. Also, before we dive in today's video, make sure to click the link at the bottom. That'll take you to a link where you can get a full PDF of this program rather than having to screenshot everything. Now for some quick definitions here, a Kaijin is a man-sized monster in folklore. So the idea here is that's what a weight class strongman needs to be. You need to be way stronger than your size would betray. You need to be agile, you need to be mobile, and maybe you need to be just a little bit hostile. Ultimately, you can run this program again in a calibration after a weight cut, or you can run it in a small deficit, which I will talk about towards the end of the program. Regardless, this program is really well designed for helping improve your conditioning and all-around strongman performance beyond simple gym lifts. With that being said, let's make you a man among monsters. This program is designed on a 4-day split where you'll have your lower and upper intensive days and then your lower and upper developmental days. Now, that's just a little bit of nomenclature there. In my little iteration of the conjugate method, I use intensive in place of max effort. And the reason why is I don't have you going to a 1 rep max on a different variation every single week. I personally like to run a max effort variation for a few more weeks at a time, and I'll often do multiple repetition maximums, especially for the sport of strongman. I think this is a bit more sport specific, and you can extract more benefit from a given variation after a couple weeks with it. And then for the developmental side of things, main difference here is we're not necessarily using accommodating resistance on everything, but in this particular program, we'll talk a bit more about that as we are integrating in some accommodating resistance as well as contrast training. Also, feel free to rearrange the days as you like if you prefer to start your weeks with upper body training, or even if you wanted to go developmental first and then intensive. Big thing is don't lift more than 2 days in a row, and try to avoid taking more than 2 days in a row off if at all possible. So something such as a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday schedule would be very viable here. A couple housekeeping things before we carry on. As far as your accessory movements go, you'll have a bit of a menu to choose from in terms of your set rep schemes or progressions you can use on there. Again, I do make overall suggestions, but anything will work in this context if there are certain things or set rep schemes you tend to really like for your accessory type movements. Now, as far as your developmental day movements, which are going to be the log, power, clean, and press, the front squat, and the deadlift, I have 3-week waves programmed out for them where you'll have the option to either increase load between waves or simply focus in on improving your speed and acceleration. Now for the intensive waves, they are 3-week waves. You have your choice of making your own 3-week waves, or I do have a 9-week suggested progression you could use. When in doubt, just be sensible with this, and ultimately, if you don't know what you're doing, stick to what's already been written out for you. With that being said, our first day of the training week will start with a max effort deadlift. Then we're going to go into a supplemental squat of your choosing. I have a few suggested variations for you there, and again, feel free to use a box. Then we're going to move into a good morning, or you could swap that out for a glute ham raise or an RDL. We just want to think some sort of hamstring dominant accessory here. Landmine rotations to work your core and improve torso strength. And then last but not least, a reverse sled drag progression. Now, as far as the deadlift progression waves go, it's going to be on a 3-week wave where in week 1, you're going to a 3-rep max, week 2, a 2-rep max, and then week 1, a 1-rep max, followed up with some back offsets. Now, remember, you're not necessarily going to be able to hit a PR every single week, nor is that the goal with the max effort method. We're simply training to strain. Something I like to do is I will pick a weight that I want to hit in week 3, usually 5 to 20 pounds over my old best on that given variation. All depends on how training has been going and how far away I've gotten from that variation, how long I've touched it, right? If it's been a long time, but I've had a lot of progress everywhere else, I might aim for 20. If it's one of those things where things aren't going so great, maybe I'll keep it closer to 5. Regardless, what I'll do is I'll work backwards from that, wherein in week 1, I try to hit 85 to 90% of that goal weight. And then in week 2, I want to hit somewhere between 90 to 95% of that goal weight. Again, calibrate based off of how you're feeling. Our goal is training to strain. You can pick any deadlift variations you like, but I do have a suggested one on screen there where for the first 3 weeks, it's a low block with axle. Then for the next couple weeks, you're going to do a deficit deadlift and then your standard deadlift from the floor thereafter. Our second training day is upper intensive. It'll start with a press progression wave, which we'll dive into a little bit here, as well as a second horizontal press of your choosing. Again, I do have some suggested variations on screen, especially if you can add chains to this. I think it really helps with the tricep overload while also sparing the shoulder joint. Then we're going to move into a unilateral vertical press. One that I really like is the half kneeling landmine 1-arm press, but this could be something such as a standing 1-arm strict circus dumbbell press, whatever it is you like. Again, suggested variations on screen. Then we're going to move into a row of your choosing. This could be a bent over barbell row, a pendlay row, or any chest supported row machine that you like. And then a sled finisher of overhead tricep extensions and sled face pulls, back and forth, just accumulating a good bit of volume and distance while also working your conditioning a little bit. Now for our primary press, it's going to be trained very similarly to your max effort deadlift. The only thing that's going to change are the back offsets. If you'll notice, we're doing a bit more volume here. I find that upper body, it's generally not as draining as lower body. Additionally, because you're assumed to be in a calorie deficit or more in a calibration phase, you have a limited amount of volume that you can perform, and upper body should get a little more volume at this time just to help hold on to that muscle, as well as hopefully develop some strength and positioning with whatever variations you're using. Now, in terms of suggested variations, I recommend starting for the first 3 weeks with a standing strict BTN press, then moving to a 70-degree incline press, and then after that a standing front press. So that's classic OHP. And if you find you can't do a behind the neck press, certainly you could swap that out for a Z press or anything similar. Now for the second press on your upper intensive day, you're going to have a certain set rep scheme that you'll see on screen, and then you have sort of a range of intensity you could work within there. Now if you don't have a 1 rep max for whatever variation you're using, just think that by the end of the last set, you should have maybe 1 or 2 quality reps left in the tank. And if you're having a great day, obviously you could work up, potentially hit a new rep PR, but again, we're just looking for training to strain, and you'll also see there is a suggested 9-week wave you could use at the bottom. Alrighty, day 3 is our lower developmental day. It's going to start with a front squat contrast series, some speed deadlifts, then a sandbag carry protocol, as well as a glute ham raise or other similar hamstring exercise of your choosing, and then we're going to top off with a deadlift stance leg press. And in the event you don't have access to a leg press, you could do something such as an SSB Hatfield squat, goblet squats, or even walking lunges. Now both the squat and the deadlift in this program are going to be trained on a 3-week pendulum wave, where after every 3 weeks you could either take a small weight jump or simply focus on being more explosive with the weights you're working with. Now one thing worth mentioning is with the front squat, after you perform a set, you'll go straight into 2 box jumps before going back to front squats. I've also made accommodation if you don't have access to chains for your front squats, you'll simply want to add a little more bar weight instead. We're not using accommodating resistance on the deadlift, just as I find right now with this program, it's not necessary. Additionally, if you do have bands but you don't have chains, follow the same prescription and see how it feels. I do prefer chains between the two of them, as they, in my experience, really help work the upper back quite a bit more due to that slight instability from the links faltering a bit. Now let's talk about that sandbag carry wave. This is entirely based around getting you to being able to perform a 3-rep heart shock protocol with a sandbag at or above your body weight. Now if you're not familiar with a heart shock, how it works is you're going to start standing next to a sandbag, you're going to run 60 feet away and then run back to the sandbag, and then you're going to carry it 60 feet. That's 1 repetition. Our goal here is to get you to a 3-rep heart shock taking less than 90 seconds, ideally sub 75 seconds, and not having you be at death's door after those 3 reps. Alrighty, last but not least, let's talk about the upper developmental day. Before we carry on, make sure to find me over on Instagram as Coach Mark Estrabio. Also, I offer one-to-one coaching. It's what I do full-time, and the odds are very good. I'd love to work with you. Now, for upper developmental day, we're going to start with a log power clean to push press away, and it's going to be part of a contrast series. Then we'll move into a sandbag to shoulder progression, after which we'll do some pull-ups or pull-downs, depending on what you have access to, a Dix press or other tricep dominant press of your choosing, and then we'll top off with some rows. Additionally, if you are feeling good at the end of this one, maybe throw in some banded tricep press downs, but it's not programmed in. Again, see how you feel. Just like with the squat and deadlift, your log and sandbag to shoulder are going to be done on a 3-week pendulum wave, wherein after each successful wave, you'll have the option to either go heavier or you can simply focus on being a bit more explosive or reducing your rest times. Now, after every set of the log push press, you'll want to do 2 med ball slams, overhead ball throws, or 2 plyometric push-ups, whatever you have access to, and that's just going to help with, again, explosive strength development. Now, worth mentioning with the bag to shoulder wave, you'll notice in week 1, you're changing the side you go to every set. In week 2, we're going to alternate the shoulder every single rep. And then in week 3, we're back to alternating sides every set. And if you don't have access to a sandbag that you can work with, you'll just want to play with it. You might consider doing something such as a 1 motion with a loading pin, or even a circus dumbbell clean, just working heavy with it. The idea here is we just want some sort of explosive triple extension movement and working unilaterally so you get a little bit of rotation about the midline. So that wraps up the actual meat and potatoes of the program itself. On screen right now are some guidelines as far as the accessory progressions that I have listed out in the PDF. Now, worth mentioning is this program, like I said, is meant to be run either at a slight calorie deficit or in a calibration phase after you've done your weight cut. Now, if you did want to run at a deficit, here's what I have suggested on screen. I'd like to use a carb cycling approach with this, wherein you have your carb up days, the 2 highest carb days that done the days before your intensive workouts. I personally am a big believer that you train off of yesterday's nutrition. Now, as far as some questions you folks might have, can you run it in a surplus? Absolutely. I don't suggest low bar in general for this program, as I find that the strain it puts on the low back, elbows, just makes it not really worth it. However, your mileage may vary. If you don't have a sled, honestly, invest in one. Go to your local used car place, go to a work garage, and just take an old tire from them. They'll happily give you one and make a sled out of it. If you don't have access to sandbags, consider putting bumper plates onto a loading pin and working with that. Again, this program is made for the strongman athlete, so there are some assumptions as far as equipment you have access to. The volume in this program is relatively low because, again, we want to maximize your recovery and survivability. And if you're really honestly pushing your accessory movements with something such as the 2RD method, it's going to be plenty of work. As far as resting between sets, I've got some general guidance right there. But it's one of those things where you don't want to turn this into a marathon session, nor do you want to go CrossFit on your developmental days. Just think long enough to be ready. My general rule of thumb is if you're 80% ready to go, you're probably ready to go because that last 20% is going to be in your head. So that about wraps it up. Hope you found this program compelling. Now there is a link to the PDF at the bottom. Just fill that out and I'll get that sent over to you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you folks in the next video.